I'm Bill McCready. I decided to make a series of trading lessons to counteract all the what I call oubliette on the internet these days. 90% of the programs you see are from guys who don't trade. So I thought I'd put a quick little set of lessons together here to give you some basic concepts and to try to make sense out of all the things that you see on the internet. I'm calling this 7 Steps to Success because I'm going to do 7 little mini videos here, and you can subscribe to them as you will. The first thing I want to do is you've got to have the required notice from the CFTC. If people are not giving you that, they are quite suspect along the way. It basically says you can trade and lose or make a lot of money, and often you can lose more than you make. I've been trading for over 15 years, and I tell you that is definitely true. At one point before I put this program together, I lost over $50,000 on one trade over Y2K. So here's what we're going to cover. One is how to pick your indicators. It takes about 2 of these videos to give you that. It's important that you understand what indicators do, how they work, and how they can mislead you if you're not careful. Second is money management, probably much more important than actually the signals that you get, even though we did over 200,000 tests on our signals. The third area is the mental aspect of trading, and that has to do with how you think. And that is even more important than the money management. Finally, how to pull a trigger or not pull a trigger too much. The biggest problem people have is they don't understand what trading is all about. It's about probabilities and about expectancy formulas. So we'll go over that, and then finally how to set your business up as a real business. Now, trading in its basic essence looks very simple. You buy low and sell high, and you sell high and buy low. And that little cycle just repeats itself. The market has been going up and down like this for centuries, literally. The rice traders in Japan started in 14th century trading. The same techniques used those days work today. The market never changes. It's always the same. It always goes up and down. It can only do 2 things, really, or 1/3, when it can consolidate and go sideways, or it can go up. And a lot of the wisdom you hear, especially in the day trading area, of the trend is your friend, is basically not true. So almost everything is counterintuitive, and one of the big things you have to do in this trading arena is learn to practice. And we'll talk about that in trading as a business and how to handle the mental aspects later. But the first thing you need is a system that you know, you've practiced, and you can trust. It's a little bit like swimming. You can read books, you can watch videos, but if you're trying to learn to swim, the only way to really learn to swim is jump in the water and go for it. Now, you're going to flounder around for a while, and that's normal with any new skill, but this is a skill set that is learnable, that is teachable, and if one person can do it, anybody can do it. And that's probably the most important thing that you should get out of this video. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some comparisons of common indicators. A lot of people use the MACD, the MACD it's called, which is a moving average convergence divergence indicator. Now, there are hundreds of indicators, and you can go read about all of them on all kinds of different websites. Basically, this one's a pretty good one. I don't use it, but it was the way I learned to trade back in 1994 and 95. Now, let me show you why it is different. Over here, we've got 2 different sets of indicators. They're all MACD indicators. And on the left side, we have the indicators for settings of 12, 26, 9, then 3, 10, 16, which is a very popular one for people trying to day trade in and out very quickly. We have one that I developed myself, 7, 28, 7, based on a factor of 4, and we'll talk about why that is later, but that one seems pretty close. And then a very long one, which is a 535.5, which Bill Williams popularized. Now, if you look at the vertical line here, there are different positions against the crossovers, and the way you play this is when the moving average crosses over the actual number is when you're supposed to get in or get out. The histogram is the up and down motion, and you can see that measures the distance between those 2 lines. That's all it does. Nothing. It's not rocket science. But then if we go over here to the right chart, we've got another thing. We'll just use the same settings of 728.7, and now what we'll do is use another mathematical principle called a simple MACD, an exponential MACD, a weighted MACD, and a smooth MACD. And you can see that each one of these is different. So when people say indicators don't work, it's because they lack the understanding of what the indicator is doing. The indicator is basically smoothing all this mass of price movement, and that's it. It just takes and adds or subtracts different bars here to figure out what the system looks like. So it is another virtual representation of the market, but it is not that important until you get one that pretty much turns right when the market turns. Now the MACD is a leading indicator, or a lagging indicator, and it is a momentum indicator. It pretty much shows you how the market is moving and with what force or power. Now let's go to another indicator called the stochastic indicator, and we'll see how these systems work. Okay, it's a very interesting thing that when you look at the different settings for these, you get all kinds of different effects. Now here we've got the same indicator on the left chart, 733, as simple, smooth, or exponential. And you can see this little peak by the blue line changes position depending on the type of calculation you use. Now we talked about using different time frames on the MACD. In the stochastic system, you can set either very short-term ones, 533, or 1333, or 2114.7 in this example. And if you look at where the blue line crosses for a signal, all right, when you reach the bottom over here, one was right over here on the top chart. Then we had a little dipsy doodle down on the second chart, and the third chart was way delayed based on the time factors. So you've got to be conscious of how the application works and what it does. And so there are literally hundreds of thousands of indicator settings that you can use. Now, a third area, one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to have a whole bunch of MACD, stochastic, RSI, CCI, all this stuff working only on price, because then those indicators become what is called collinear. They're all based on the price movement, which means you can get a whole bunch of confirming signals all looking the same, but they're not giving you enough information about what's going on with the market. So there is a system called Fibonacci retracements and Fibonacci indicators. I won't go into the details of what that is. You can go take a look for yourself, but you get either retracements or extension. Now, they do work, and they work very well because so many people believe they work. If everybody believes they work, everybody will jump on board when they get a Fibonacci retracement number, and that happens a lot. But there are additional indicators in this kind of realm based on support and resistance and natural extensions of trends and things like that that are even more accurate than Fibonacci retracements. And finally, there are support and resistance lines. Now, you've seen a lot of these breakouts where the market will go up so high and it will stop and turn around and go back down, and that's called a resistance level. So first, let's look at the Fibonacci retracements. The program I use is Ensign software, and this prints all of these automatically. Now, they're not always exactly Fibonacci numbers, okay? There are things like 0.707, which is the square root of 2. The market tends to travel further than you think. So there's a lot of these kind of areas. But here's a 38% retracement. Now, when you get multiple numbers or multiple lines all add a green arrow, and these all print automatically with the program we use, that is an exit signal. It is not an entry signal, because what could happen is the price could still go lower down to this level or this level or this level. But if you got in up here at 1058 and you got out at 1052, you picked up 6 points, which is 115% of your margin. You try to make 115% putting your money in the bank, and you'll see there's a big difference. Now the other area are what are called support and resistance lines. The previous day's market has support and resistance lines that measure first, second, and third resistance, even fourth resistance. Generally, the market bounces around between what's called a pivot point, which is basically the median or the mean of the previous day's market, including the overnights, and that's called a pivot point. So the market always tends to try to go back to the pivot point. If it's going to go down or it's going to go up, it's going to follow these resistance lines. And you can see here's one that bounced off of that a lot, went up, couldn't retrace that market, says just by looking at that arrow and that turnover it's going to go short again. Now we came down here and we reached a resistance level that was not exactly the support level, but it then went up and made a higher high. And finally you have a higher low here, which looks like an inverted head and shoulders pattern. We do use patterns at the same time. And after it once got through the first support level, that's what the 1S was, it rocketed right on up through the midpoint of the first support, also a very good spot for turnarounds, and headed immediately for the pivot point. So if you get a signal combined with all the other signals we're going to talk about, and we basically have 3 signals for a setup, and you see a signal like this, that's your target. You've got to know where to get out and when to get in, and that's all you've got to do to go back to that original diagram we had of the roller coaster. So if you happen to get in here when it broke through the first support at 1046 and you got out at 1050, that's 80% return on your risk. Well, that's enough for this one. It's going to take a little while to get the other things together, so let's talk about what's next. I'm going to show you how to use these indicators in combination and how the variables are set. So that'll be the next video. If you want instant access to the entire way we run our program, you can go to futurestrading.secrets.com and sign up for the written trading lessons. There will be a link and access directly to the video of our entire program. So thanks for listening. I'll get back to you in a couple of days.